My daughter demanded her dead father's wedding ring for her wedding. My mother-in-law manipulated her against me. But when I pulled the $20,000 wedding fund and set a brutal boundary, my daughter finally saw the truth, and what happened next left both of them speechless. I'm 48 years old. I've been a widow for 4 years now. And honestly, I never thought my own daughter would put me through what I went through last year. I work as a baker. I have my own bakery that I opened like 8 years ago with my husband Leonard, and I always believed I'd raised my daughter Lillian to be a good person, with values and all that. But what happened with her father's wedding ring basically destroyed me for months. And I still sometimes have trouble processing that my mother-in-law Rosemary had so much to do with all the drama. I guess I should start from the beginning, so you understand all the context. Leonard died 4 years ago from cardiac arrest, completely unexpected. He was only 50 years old, and I was devastated because we'd been married for 22 years. It was horrible. I mean, the kind of pain you feel in your chest physically, that doesn't go away for months. Lillian was 21 at the time, and she took it really hard too because she was daddy's girl. She always was. The first 2 years after his death were the hardest, honestly, and I clung to very few things that reminded me of him. But the wedding ring was sacred to me. I wore it for 22 years, and when Leonard died, I only took it off for the funeral because I couldn't bear to see it on my hand that day. But afterwards, I put it back on and basically haven't taken it off since. It's a simple ring, nothing fancy, a white gold band with an inscription inside that says our initials and our wedding date, but to me, it's worth more than anything in the world. Now, about Rosemary. That woman never liked me, never approved of Leonard marrying me. I come from a very modest family. My dad was a mechanic and my mom worked cleaning houses, and Rosemary always thought her son deserved better. Someone on her social level, or however she saw it. During the first years of my marriage to Leonard, she made passive-aggressive comments all the time, like, "Oh, how nice your dress. You can tell you didn't spend much on it," or things like that. Leonard confronted her sometimes, but she's one of those people who are never going to change, manipulative to the core. She's 72 now and lives with Theodore, my brother-in-law, Leonard's older brother, who basically takes care of her because she's been a widow too for like 15 years. Theodore is a good guy. Always tried to stay neutral in all this, but his mom has him pretty controlled. The thing is that after Leonard died, Rosemary kind of expected me to get closer to her, to include her more in my life and in Lillian's life, but I honestly didn't have the emotional energy to deal with her toxicity while I was processing my grief. We'd see her on special occasions, Christmas and stuff, but I kept my boundaries very clear. Lillian would sometimes go visit her alone, which was fine by me because she was her grandmother after all, but I didn't know that Rosemary was basically brainwashing her little by little, putting ideas in her head about me. Fast forward to like a year and a half ago. Lillian met Ethan at her work. He's an accountant or something like that, comes from a family that's also pretty modest like mine, and they fell in love. I was happy for her, honestly. Ethan seemed nice from the beginning. He's respectful and you can tell he loves her. They dated for like 3 years before he proposed, and when he finally did, I was so excited. I remember perfectly the day she came to my house with the engagement ring on her finger, all radiant, and I hugged her and cried with happiness because I thought, my baby is getting married. Leonard would be so proud. But then, like 2 weeks after they got engaged, Lillian came to my house one afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing dough for some cakes I had to deliver the next day, and she sat at the kitchen table with that face you make when you're going to ask for something difficult. She told me, "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." And I wiped my hands on my apron and sat down with her thinking maybe she wanted to talk about the wedding date or the budget or something like that. But no. What she said was, "Mom, I want Dad's wedding ring to use at my wedding." I froze. I literally felt like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. I told her, "Lillian, that ring is mine. It's the only thing I have left of your father besides memories." And she interrupted me and said, "But Mom, Dad was my dad too. I also have a right to have something of his. And besides, it would be beautiful if I could have a part of him with me on my special day." I tried to explain that I understood she also missed her father. That of course I understood. But that specific ring was something I couldn't give her because it was too personal for me. I suggested we could look for something else. Maybe one of Leonard's favorite ties that Ethan could wear, or his watch that I had saved. But she got super defensive and told me the watch didn't mean the same thing. That the ring was a symbol of love and commitment, and that it was perfect for her wedding. The conversation got tense quickly. I tried to stay calm, but Lillian started raising her voice, saying I was being selfish, that Dad would have wanted her to have it, that she couldn't believe I was denying her this. And then, and this is what really hurt me, she told me she had talked to Grandma Rosemary, and that she also thought I should give her the ring. That's when it clicked. You know what I mean? Rosemary was behind all this, putting ideas in my daughter's head. I told her no, that my decision was final, and Lillian got up from the table, furious, and left slamming the door. She didn't talk to me for like a week, and when she finally did, it was to tell me she needed my help with the wedding budget. You see, when Leonard died, he left a decent life insurance policy, and I had saved quite a bit from the bakery, so I was in a position where I could help financially with Lillian's wedding. We had talked about me covering the dress, the food, and part of the venue, which in total was like $15,000 or $20,000. I don't remember the exact figure, but it was quite a bit of money. But after the ring fight, I was hurt, very hurt. And when Lillian called me to talk about money, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't yelled at me and accused me of being selfish a week before, something in me broke. I told her I needed to think about it, that I wasn't sure I could help financially if she couldn't respect my emotional boundaries. She was quiet for a second and then said, "Are you withdrawing the money because I didn't give you the ring?" And I told her, "It's not about the ring, Lillian. It's about how you treated me, about the lack of respect." So she hung up the phone and I sat there in my living room feeling like the worst mother in the world. You know what it feels like when your own daughter makes you feel guilty for setting boundaries? It's horrible. I cried that night. I cried a lot, and I sat there staring at the ring on my hand thinking, Leonard, what would you do in my place? About 3 months went by without Lillian and me talking much. She'd send me short messages once in a while, basically ignoring me, and I didn't make much effort to fix things either because honestly I was tired of being the only one who always gave in. During that time, Theodore called me a couple of times to tell me Rosemary was worried about the situation, that maybe I should reconsider the ring thing. And I told him very clearly that Rosemary had nothing to do with this, that it was between my daughter and me, and to please tell her not to interfere. Then, like in month 4 after our initial fight, Lillian showed up at my house on a Sunday afternoon. I was watching a movie, and when I opened the door, she was standing there with red eyes. You could tell she'd been crying. And she said, "Mom, I need your help." I let her in, and we sat on the couch. And she basically told me they had found the perfect place for the wedding, but they needed to give a deposit of $5,000 in the next 2 weeks or they'd lose it, and that Ethan and she didn't have enough money saved. Part of me wanted to tell her that was her problem, that she had decided to distance herself from me, but the other part, the mother part that can never be completely turned off, wanted to help her. I asked her why I should help her after how she had treated me, and she started crying and told me she was sorry, that she had been talking a lot with Grandma Rosemary, and that she had been telling her I was selfish for not giving her the ring, but that now she realized maybe she had been too hard on me. It wasn't the apology I wanted, honestly, because she was still blaming Rosemary instead of taking her own responsibility. But it was something. I told her I would help her with the deposit, but with one condition, that she cut contact with Rosemary until after the wedding. I know it sounds harsh, but I was fed up with that woman manipulating my daughter against me. Lillian was quiet, like processing what I had just told her, and then nodded and said, "Okay, I'll do it." I was surprised she accepted so easily, but then she explained that Rosemary had also been pressuring her for Ethan and her to move near Theodore's house after getting married, and that had been stressing her out a lot because they wanted their own space. So I made the transfer for the deposit, and things between Lillian and me improved a little. It wasn't like before. We didn't talk every day or anything, but at least we were in contact. She'd send me pictures of wedding dresses she was considering, ask my opinion about flowers, that kind of thing. I blocked Rosemary from my phone because I didn't want to hear anything from her, and I asked Theodore to please not pass me messages from his mom. But Rosemary, being Rosemary, wasn't going to give up so easily. Like 2 months after Lillian and I had partially made up, Theodore called me one night like 10 p.m., which was weird because he never called so late. I answered, and he said, "Brenda, I'm so sorry, but my mom is here next to me asking me to call you because she wants to talk to you." I told him no, to please tell her I had nothing to talk to her about. But I heard Rosemary in the background yelling that she just wanted to fix things with her granddaughter, that I was keeping her away from her family. I told Theodore to tell his mom that Lillian was my daughter, not hers, and that if she cared so much about the relationship with her granddaughter, maybe she should stop manipulating her and talking bad about me. Theodore sighed and said, "I know, Brenda, I know." And we hung up. But that call left me anxious for days because I knew Rosemary wasn't going to stop. And I was right. Like a week later, I unblocked Rosemary from my phone because I thought, you know what? I'm an adult. I can handle this. Big mistake. Literally, 5 minutes after unblocking her, she called me. I answered because I wanted to end this once and for all. And what followed was basically 20 minutes of Rosemary yelling at me, telling me I was a bad mother, that Leonard would be ashamed of how I was treating his daughter, that the ring wasn't just mine but was a family ring, and that Lillian had a right to it. I tried to stay calm at first, but eventually I exploded too. I yelled at her that she had never accepted me, that for 22 years she had made me feel less than, that her son had been happy with me in spite of her, and that now that he wasn't here, I wasn't going to let her take away the little I had left of him. I told her that Leonard had given that ring to me, that it was mine by right, and that if she really loved her granddaughter, she would respect her mother's wishes instead of turning her against me. Rosemary hung up on me without saying anything else, and I was left there shaking with rage. I called Lillian immediately and told her what had happened, and she told me she didn't know Grandma had called me, that she hadn't talked to her in weeks as we had agreed. I believed her, because she sounded genuinely surprised and upset. The next few months were relatively quiet. Lillian and I continued planning the wedding. I paid for her dress, which cost like $3,000. Beautiful, by the way. And things between us were better, although there was still, like, a tension that didn't completely go away. The wedding was planned for June, and we were already in January, so it was like 6 months away. And then the dinner incident happened. One Sunday in early February, I invited Lillian, Ethan, and Theodore to dinner at my house. I didn't invite Rosemary, obviously, and Theodore came alone saying his mom was tired and would stay home. We were all at the table eating. I had made lasagna, which is one of the things I make best, and we were talking about the honeymoon Lillian and Ethan were planning when the doorbell rang. Theodore offered to open it, and when he did, there was Rosemary. She had taken a taxi to my house without telling anyone. She walked in like it was her own house, went straight to the dining room where we all were, and pointed her finger at me saying, You took my granddaughter away from me. You ruined this family." I got up from my chair and told her, "Rosemary, you weren't invited. You need to leave now." But she kept yelling, saying she was going to call a lawyer, that she was going to fight for visitation rights with Lillian, a bunch of absurd things. Lillian stood up too and told her grandma, "Please calm down," but Rosemary completely ignored her and kept attacking me verbally. She said I was a bad influence, that I had alienated Lillian from her paternal family, that the ring should be Lillian's because Leonard would have wanted that. At that moment, Theodore approached his mom and told her very firmly, "Mom, stop, we're leaving now," and took her by the arm. Rosemary resisted at first, but Theodore is a big man and basically carried her to the door while she kept yelling. He put her in his car and they left, but not before Theodore told me, "I'm so sorry, Brenda. This should never have happened." I just nodded because I was in shock. Honestly, I couldn't even process what had just happened. When I came back to the dining room, Lillian was crying. Ethan was consoling her, and I sat next to her and held her hand. She looked at me and said, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was coming. I swear I didn't know." And I told her, "I know, honey. I know." But then Lillian said something that broke my heart. She said, "I never realized how horrible she was to you. All this time I thought maybe you were exaggerating or being too sensitive, but now I saw it with my own eyes and I understand why you set those boundaries." We stayed up talking until like 2 in the morning that night. Lillian told me that for years Rosemary had been telling her things about me, that I was controlling, that I didn't value Leonard's memory, that her dad's family should be more important to her than me. And Lillian, being young and impressionable, had started to believe some of those things, especially after Leonard died and she was processing her own grief. I told her I understood, that Rosemary was very good at manipulating, that I had dealt with that for more than 20 years. Lillian apologized to me again, but this time it was different. It was a real apology. No excuses, not blaming anyone else. She told me, "Mom, I was horrible to you. I said terrible things to you over a ring when what I really should have done was thank you for everything you've done for me, especially after losing Dad." We cried together, we hugged, and I felt that finally, after months of distance and pain, my daughter had come back to me. I told her I loved her, that I had always loved her even when we were fighting, and she told me she loved me too. The months leading up to the wedding were beautiful. Lillian and I went back to being like before. We talked every day, we'd make coffee dates, she'd come to the bakery and help me bake on weekends. Rosemary tried to contact her a couple of times, but Lillian blocked her from everything, and Theodore sent us updates, saying his mom was furious but that he had her under control. June came, and the wedding was 2 weeks away. One night, Lillian came to my house, and we sat in the backyard with a glass of wine. She was nervous about the wedding, not because she had doubts about Ethan, but because, it's normal to get nervous before something so big. Then she looked at me and said, "Mom, I know you'll probably say no, and it's completely okay if you do, but I wanted to ask you something." My heart started beating fast because I thought, oh no, she's going to ask me for the ring again. And yes, that's exactly what she did, but in a completely different way. She said, "Mom, would you consider lending me Dad's ring just for the ceremony? Not to keep it, just as something borrowed. You know? Like that tradition of something old, something new, something borrowed." And she promised she'd return it to me immediately after the ceremony. It took me by surprise, honestly. I was quiet for a moment, processing her request, and she quickly added, "But Mom, if you don't want to, it's perfectly fine. I understand completely. I'm not upset about it anymore or anything. I just wanted to ask." And I could see in her eyes that she meant it, that if I said no, she would respect it without resentment. I looked at the ring on my hand, that ring that had been my constant companion all these years, and I thought about Leonard. I thought about how he loved Lillian more than anything in the world, how he would have wanted her to be happy on her special day. And I realized that lending her the ring for a few hours wasn't going to take away the memories. It wasn't going to change what that ring meant to me. I told her yes, that she could use it as something borrowed, and Lillian started crying with happiness and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. The wedding day was perfect. Lillian was radiant in her white dress, and when it came time to walk to the altar, I stood next to her in the bridal room and took off the ring. I put it on her pinky finger because that was the only one it fit, and I told her, "Your dad is here with you today. He always has been." She cried. I cried. It was a beautiful moment. Rosemary wasn't invited to the wedding, obviously. Theodore came alone and was very respectful about everything, and when we asked about his mom, he just said she wasn't feeling well and we left it at that. The ceremony was beautiful. The reception was amazing. And at the end of the night, when Lillian and Ethan were leaving for their honeymoon, she gave me back the ring. She put it in my hand and said, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." And I put it back on, feeling complete. It's been like 10 months since the wedding. Lillian and Ethan are happy. They live in a nice apartment like 20 minutes from my house, and I see them often. Rosemary apparently is still upset and has told Theodore that I manipulated Lillian to alienate her from her, but I don't even care what that woman thinks anymore. Lillian completely cut contact with her and says she doesn't regret anything. Last week, Lillian came to the bakery while I was closing and helped me clean up. While we were washing the pans, she said, "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me even when I was an idiot," and I told her I would never give up on her because she's my daughter and I love her unconditionally. She asked me if I ever forgave her for the ring thing and the horrible things she said to me, and I told her I forgave her a long time ago. That in the end, what mattered was that we learned to communicate better and that our relationship now is stronger than ever. I still wear my ring every day. Sometimes I look at it and think about Leonard, about everything we went through together, about how he would have handled this whole situation with Rosemary and with Lillian. I think he'd be proud of how I handled things, how I kept my boundaries, but at the same time found a way to make our daughter happy on her special day without sacrificing something that was so important to me. And that's enough, I guess.